Hello, and you're very welcome to another edition of the TheJMacPodcast. I'm John McMahon, and of course, this podcast is sponsored by orgaretro.com and Attack Sport. Use my promo code JMacPodcast to get 15% off on orgaretro.com and get the best skins, gloves, and equipment on Atak.ie. Be attack minded. And Stephen, we are here to talk about this weekend's All Ireland football final. And tonight I'm joined by Kevin McGarty, Daniel Goulding, and Daniel Hussey. So, three great men alongside me tonight to discuss the last game of the inter-county season, lads. So it's hard to believe. I don't know where the last couple of months have gone, but it's all coming to an end this Saturday, and we cannot wait for it. So I'll start off with Mr. McGarty. How are you keeping?
I'm great, John. I'm great. I'm just disappointed I'm doing this on a Monday night and not watching the golf, So, no, to be honest with you, great weekend. Wasn't a ladies' final, just one of the great adverts. This last 2 weekends in Croke Park has been absolutely fabulous for our game. So I'm really, really looking forward to this game. It's one of the All Ireland finals in the last maybe 5, 6, 7 years that we can turn around and say nobody can know what's going to go on this weekend. So, for all us GA enthusiasts, what a weekend to look forward to, to finish the season.
100%. And obviously, a course, a massive shout out to the Meath ladies. They bet Dublin yesterday, 111 to Dublin's 12 points. So massive congratulations to the Meath ladies. Mr. Daniel Goulding, how are you keeping?
Good, can't complain. No. Kevin said looking forward to hopefully a kind of a game where it's hard to analyse. We don't know what's going to happen. Not like the finals of the last 6, 7 years where you're expecting Dublin to win. So look, it's a novelty final in many ways, and look, be interesting to see now is this Mayo's time.
Definitely, and we've Dub joining us tonight. They're not in the final this weekend. So Daniel, how are you keeping?
Yeah, it's a bit weird without the Dubs, lads, isn't it? Honestly, I don't know whether I like it or not, but it reminds me of pre-2011 days where we lose a heartbreaking semi-final and just watch along and wonder how if we would have beaten the other team in the final, kind of thing. But like the lads say, really looking forward to it. It's a complete novelty. There's very little form to go on in championship. It's just I'm struggling big time to call it already, 5 or 6 days out. But yeah, it's gonna be epic, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely epic. And one game we're really looking forward to, and geez, we cannot call it. So I'll start off with yourself, Daniel. Obviously, Tyrone got over Kerry in the semi-final there last weekend, and obviously Mayo had that fantastic win against Dublin. It's a clean slate now. Both teams got their media days out of the way very quickly. They've all kind of gone under the rocks. So Daniel Goulding, what's the thoughts ahead of this one?
Yeah, looking forward to it, I suppose. You look at Tyrone's victory against Kerry. Kerry, in many respects, will be kicking themselves. Kind of fell into the traps Tyrone put in place for them. Never changed their game plan for the whole day. And look, Tyrone just ended up more aggressive defensively, created multiple turnovers, and wouldn't be surprised if we saw a very cagey final. And Mayo playing very defensive as well. And breaking at pace like they did against Dublin in the second half, especially. Yeah, I have a feeling it'll be just a defensive game from both teams, especially the first half. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's like, even look at the player of the year. It's all up in the air. It's two kind of teams coming in. You wouldn't say under the radar, but kind of little. We've seen little of them at this in the last couple of years. Kind of this level that they're not going out having to beat the Dubs. So it's going to be very interesting to see kind of the two teams you wouldn't expect getting into the final kind of going for it. And I suppose the big pressure again is on Mayo. So can they handle the big day? They'll have to come a point where they kind of throw the shackles off and you don't have one of these crazy things happen to them in the final. But it'll be interesting to see will this be the final that happens in.
Definitely. What about yourself, Kev? One you're looking forward to?
Yeah, eager anticipation. Look, I think Daniel said something it's going to be very prevalent this week as the week continues, and the four of us maybe look at different media forums. Daniel said that the pressure is all on Mayo. For me, it's not. That's the problem with Mayo. They've always put too much pressure on themselves. My mother sends me the Irish Times on a Sunday. I was really interested in Keith Duggan's article yesterday with James Horan, and James Horan was saying, for the last couple of years, we've had lads around us who have been saying, best of luck and patting us on the back. And he was sort of saying in the article, the time is now over for that. The time is gone where Mayo teams get the finals and, maybe perform and lose. The time is now for the business. And, James has been there with that old Mayo syndrome of we get to a final, we'll maybe play well, but maybe, the luck goes against us. Now's the time for these guys to be stood up and be counted. And for Mayo, yes, the pressure will be coming on Sunday from the old Mayo supporters or the rest of Ireland saying they can't do it. But why don't they psychologically flip this on Tyrone and say, actually, the pressure's on Tyrone. The pressure's on you, Petey Hart. The pressure's on you, Matty Donnelly. You've been around for a few years. You guys lost a final a couple of years ago. He didn't really perform against the Dubs, who really, in the second half, outshone you. Flip it round early on. Psychologically get inside the heads of Tyrone early on. Put it up to them. Few turnovers. Jim McGuinness also wrote this Sunday in the Irish Times, and he had a very good article that Mayo aren't going to give up the same things as Kerry give up. I don't think that, Kerry were very, they were a bit lethargic in the tackle is the best way to put it to you. They weren't as stiff or as competitive as Tyrone were. I think Mayo were going to be really up for this game. I think if they go out the first 10, 15, 20 minutes and they lay down a marker, they're going to put Tyrone in the back foot. So the psychology all for me, for James Horan coming into this game as a Mayo man, is saying, yes, traditionally the pressure is on us, but let's relieve that pressure. Let's put them on the back foot. Let's see what they have. Let's see if their experienced players going to stand up the way they did stand up against Kerry. Let's bottle them up earlier on and get a few turnovers and see how they go. But for me, it's a really, really intriguing game in different ways. We've got the experienced lads there. We're talking about Matty Donnelly, maybe Petey Hart, maybe Pádraig Camshi. And on the other hand, you've got the likes of Lee Keegan, Killian O'Connor. These boys have soldiered through so many All-Ireland semi-finals and finals. And then we have this novelty in the middle of the park, which is such a big and key area where you've got young Ruan and you've got young Loftus. They're a bit wet behind the ears, let's be honest. But so are Kirkpatrick and Canada. These two young, that is such a big area of the field. And you have four young lads in the middle of there that are going to be so key to this game on Sunday. So there's so many different areas we'll pick over the next 45 minutes, John. But, for me, the psychology coming in, it's all about Mayo now. It really is. Other people have worried about, Mayo worried about other teams for too long. It's for them to worry about how they put the other team in the back foot now.
Very interesting point, Kevin. Daniel, what would be your take on that? Obviously, there is massive pressure on both teams, but from the outset, you'd be thinking, okay, massive pressure on Mayo because they haven't delivered the goods just yet. And obviously, Tyrone were in the All-Ireland final in 2018, and Dublin obviously got over the line that day. But what would be your take on Kevin's point there, Dan?
Yeah, I'd actually think the pressure's on both these teams big time. And the reason is, while I don't think either Mayo or Tyrone are at their ceiling yet in terms of the journey with their various management teams, I think there's more in these counties. I think this time next year that they'll both be better teams. But you got to remember that Dublin will be back next year. Kerry will be back next year. Donegal are watching Tyrone. Donegal had Tyrone beat if Michael Murphy scores the penalty. You've got Armagh in Ulster, Monaghan in Ulster, Galway. So suddenly you've got 7 or 8 teams that genuinely think they'll win the All-Ireland next year. So you've got a coin flip of an All-Ireland final here where Mayo and Tyrone could change the trajectory of either of those counties, but they might not get this opportunity in 2 or 3 years' times, even if they keep improving. So I don't think there's ever been as big pressure on both these counties. Mayo for what they've been through, as outlined over the last, 10 years, particularly under James Horan and in between that as well. But also Tyrone, and it's a good point, the likes of Peter Hart that have been on the road a long time. They'd love to get that recent enough All-Ireland in 2021. So I think there's massive pressure on both these counties, and I think that will come across. I know something Daniel said earlier on in terms of being a cagey game. I definitely think there'll be large spells of the game where Mayo in particular might keep possession a lot more than they usually would, just because they don't want to make the same mistakes that Kerry did running down those blind alleys. So it's fascinating in that sense in terms of what county's going to take the bigger risk and if that will end up paying off for them kind of thing. But it's an interesting kind of midfield battle that Kevin mentions as well, because you've got 4 very young players there not proven at this level. And I would even throw into the mix Diarmuid O'Connor, who kind of plays a lot around the middle for Mayo as well. I think at times they almost play 3 midfielders, or at least Loftus and Diarmuid O'Connor would switch a lot. So that'll be very interesting. But, again, Kerry won the majority of the kickouts of their own kickouts and Tyrone's kickouts. And ended up not winning the game because I think Tyrone got 2-9 from turnover. So it'd be fascinating if the kick-out battle is as irrelevant on this weekend as it was a couple of Sundays ago. But it's such a big game. There's so much pressure, and I do think that will come across on the pitch when you watch both sides play.
John, can I just ask Daniel Goulding a real question here? Because obviously we've got someone amongst us who maybe
run all Ireland.
Well, he hasn't really, and but the thing about Daniel, the question I want to ask him is, suppose Daniel, you'd played so long, maybe 4, 5, 6 years into that, you'd lost a couple of All-Irelands before you actually won one. Did you really feel the pressure coming into that game against maybe that year that Kerry were out and Dublin were out and Cork have now got into a final, rightly so, against the Down team? Did you feel real pressure coming into that game that was your real chance?
Yeah, it's a funny one because actually I suppose that was the calmest of the 3 finals I went into. I suppose number one, having experienced the year before and kind of learned from that and kind of, letting the game pass you by to an extent. And it's funny then, as a team, though, we probably did feel it. We probably put in our worst performance of the year in the final and, only played well in the last 15, 20 minutes, to kind of win the game. And since we played down a couple of times after, we kind of were well on top of them. So it just showed how much the pressure affected us. But it's going to be interesting now from Mayo's perspective. You'd Padraig O'Hord last interviewed after the game like a man possessed. We're on a mission, we're going to do it. And then you'll have the flip side of that. You'll have Aidan O'Shea and Kevin McLaughlin and even Lee Keegan and these lads. And, it'll be in the back of their minds that, look, here we go again. This is another one. And, I'd agree with what you're saying about, their mindset has to be we put the pressure on Tyrone and, we just throw the shackles off. And there's a big difference between thinking like that and doing it. So that's the big acid test for Mayo, I suppose, in this final is can they put in a performance for 75 plus minutes to win this game and just absorb everything Tyrone are going to show at them physically. Mayo will be a lot more physical team than Kerry were as well, to be fair. It's just interesting. It's hard to analyse really because you take Clifford out of Kerry and Kerry would have been bang average that day altogether. He got wonder scores most counties now are taught to play the percentages and everyone Kerry didn't play the percentages even with Clifford with these scores. It'll be interesting to see now how Mayo are going to address it. Will it be cagey or will they go for these shots from outside the D? And we've seen in the Mayo before, these kind of shots are great when they work, but when they don't, it's drained the life out of them in past finals. So look, it's very interesting. I still think it's going to be very cagey. Mayo have to just take it as if it's their first final, really. Can't even let any other final into their head, and that's the challenge. That's the big challenge for them. We talked about this in the podcast after the last semi-final. I was nearly just covering my eyes, hoping they'd get off the pitch after the final whistle blew. It was like the All-Ireland final had been won, and look, they're lucky, I think, in many ways that COVID has come. It's nearly 4 weeks for them to come down off that high because that was a crazy high for them. So, look, I'm sure James Horn will have reset them again. But look, from a Mayo point of view, that's the big acid test for them. Is can they play the game in such a way that the shackles are totally off? And look, you'll be hoping they can. You've seen this with a lot of teams. There comes a point where they do just, take the shackles off and have a right go off it and get their just reward. And maybe this is their time.
We'll wait and see, Daniel. Obviously, Kev, Brian Dewar said during the week it was the embarrassing league defeat against Tyrone in the league where Kerry went to town on them. That they used that as inspiration. They learned a lot from that game. Obviously, that game realistically, the grand scheme of things didn't do Kerry much good because there's a hammering. Kev, that's strong words from Brian Dewar.
Yeah, well, I'd agree with Pat's plan on certain things. Tyrone people will say that to you, but Daniel Lussey made a very good point earlier on about this Tyrone team is only a wee bit down the line. It's a bit fortunate they've got the All-Ireland final this year. I'm not saying fair play to them. They've got their merit, but, just with the Dubs not being about and, Kerry really taking their scalp, them coming back and taking the Kerry scalp against all odds. But, Tyrone they're only a bit down the line yet. There's more to come out of this team. The one thing about any team, I suppose Daniel's been involved in teams, John, you and both Daniel, and yourself, John, have been involved in teams, whether it be football or whether it be volleyball or whatever else. You take a scalp and you go lick your wounds and you learn deeply from it, And I'd say Tyrone probably, knowing Tyrone, they probably trained hard the next 2-3 weeks after that. They've knocked lumps out of each other, and that's been a real learning curve, and you need that in your season. Of course you do. Any team needs a bad performance in their season to say, look, it's not going to be a perfect season. We need to get up about ourselves here. We need to learn things from this, and we need to get back on the road. And, if you asked any of the four of us right now on this podcast, after that game, that particular day in Tralee, in Killarney and Fitzgerald Stadium, would any of us see Tyrone where they are today? No. Would any of us see them beating Donegal? No. So, all credit to Brian Dewar, all credit to Fergal Logan, all credit to the psychology, and all credit to the players for what they have done, turning this around. So, we all mightn't have seen it, John, but looking forward, Tyrone have a very strong panel. They're going to be about for 2, 3, 4 more years to come. They have an excellent minor team come through this year. So, the real good green shoots, which is great for us as junior enthusiasts to see, for the next couple of years. But, going into the game on Sunday, psychologically, I think Tyrone are at an absolutely brilliant level. They've had that beaten this year. They've regrouped. They're a real, real strong bunch. You've seen the way they fought in packs. They were like wolves in that semi-final at times. They were fighting for the jersey, the bets they had coming on, the guys putting their bodies on the line, And it's that in any sport, that is really difficult to buy, that hunger. And when you have that, you're going places.
Yeah, 100%, Kevin. Daniel Hussey, obviously, I was writing an article. Seamus O'Shea he's backing his brother Aidan O'Shea to produce the goods of the final. Obviously, Aidan had a bit of an off day against the Dubs in the semi-final. Aidan O'Shea this weekend, Daniel, what's the verdict on it?
Yeah, massive game for him. I see he was being called out by Joe Brawley in the opening of his Independent article. He said something along the lines of, it's social media. It was weird, if you read it, it's actually used Aidan O'Shea as there was some poster he was posing some photo, and that's the reason. I don't know what that's the reason for. Maybe I haven't won an All-Ireland in whatever 60 years or something, but that's a different side. I just can't believe that sort of thing is still a topic of debate, or Joe has that entitlement to write that in the Irish Independent. But I read those quotes that from that interview with Seamus O'Shea, and he's saying Aidan gets a hard time with the attention, and of course that probably brought more attention to Aidan O'Shea. I know what Seamus was trying to do, but maybe he's better off not just talking about it all. I don't know how it came up in the interview or what happened, but he's got a massive game. Like, I thought he was very unlucky in some sense, because like the first ball he got was about after 10 minutes or maybe a little bit during those first 10 minutes, and he caught it, or at least caught it on the bounce, and his man slipped and he had a perfect chance to hit it over the bar, and he must have missed it by that much. Now, if that ball goes over, I think the following mark from 13 meters goes over the bar then, and I think a few more things go his way. So I wouldn't be against Mayo. I think they'll definitely start him, obviously, but I wouldn't be against him trying this 14 out again against Tyrone, and maybe putting a couple of balls in, because at least it gives them an option. But I don't know about anyone else, but when Aidan O'Shea came off in Croke Park, the atmosphere was like, that's a waving the white flag moment. We've ran out of ideas here. We're going to take off our captain, our talisman, our man who's been there for the last 10 years. I couldn't believe the substitution, to be honest with you. And look, it worked. James Hoare, it almost like the shackles came off in that moment. And granted, there was another few minutes before the comeback really started, but he's just such a big player that I would expect a response from him. And I know a lot of Dublin fans always say he never turns up in All-Ireland finals based on not scoring. I would somewhat disagree with that. Like, I remember a brilliant hand pass to Lee Keegan scoring the goal in the Davin end for Mayo in an All-Ireland final, I think 17 or maybe 16. But like, the whole point is he's turned up in big moments. Scoring's not his game. So it's kind of just saying it's a throwaway line and an easy thing, where I do think he's a big game player. I think he'll turn up on Saturday with seriously a point to prove. And he's definitely a player Mayo need, mainly because of his physicality. Like Kevin mentioned, like there's no way Mayo will lose the physical battle to Tyrone as much as Kerry did, which is true. But for that to happen, they need their most physical players on the pitch, which include Aidan O'Shea. So massive game for him, but I'm fully expecting like a big response from him, and I'm fully expecting him to play 70 minutes this time. And I don't think he'll want to come off, because I think he himself will probably would have felt somewhat embarrassed the fact he's captain, talisman, and was taken off. But look, it is a big boost for James Horan, and not that he needed it as a manager, but it showed the rest of the camp that you have to turn up. Otherwise, there's no name big enough that if you're not playing well, you're going to get taken off. And after 43 minutes, Aidan O'Shea would have had no complaints about getting taken off.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose obviously this is basically a new test because they've never played obviously Tyrone in an All-Ireland final before, Daniel. They've played Dublin numerous times. Obviously, maybe Dublin had O'Shea's number like in numerous occasions in numerous finals, but it's a clean slate for O'Shea, you'd nearly say, Daniel. Mostly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a massive, and again, it's because of the novelty of not having Tyrone. There's no like baggage there. Where rightly or wrongly, as I said, I personally don't think he has any baggage against Dublin. But if they're playing Dublin today, there would be a lot of people saying he's never shown up against Dublin, that sort of thing. So again, like it's such a because I think there's a way Mayo can get the ball into him and then pop it off to Tommy Conroy or Ryan O'Donoghue, who they have that bit of pace, and I do think Aidan O'Shea's capable of doing that. But I would also try and get him out at number 11 as well and mix it up a little bit like they've done in the past. But it seems this year more than anything they've gone more 14 with him, and it's a position I've always thought like he could play. Now he completely didn't do himself any favors the last day, but I did think there was potential in that performance that he can again go and really make a difference. But it's interesting. I want to pick up Kevin on one of the points he made there, because I'm a full believer in it. Like, you need a hammering as a team to really dial yourself in, because you can say you're focused all you want, but until you have that hammering and things go wrong, that's when you really know the test. And Dublin would not have won the 2011 All-Ireland without that start of the Earwigs performance in 2009, and they wouldn't have won the 5 in a row without getting beaten by Donegal or getting caught on the hop in 2014. Now, both those performances led to complete change in style of play, but you wouldn't have been able to do all that had that not those moments didn't happen. So I think that's massive for Tyrone. They've had that. They're so switched on. There's a siege mentality building. And while next year, again, as I said at the start of the podcast, I think they'll be a better team. They will not get a better opportunity than a coin flip opportunity against Mayo to beat them. So the pressure's on both these counties big times. And I do think Tyrone have that small bit of momentum the way this year has just turned out for them.
Definitely. Daniel Goulding, Colin Kavanagh was saying during the week that he was just thinking of what could have been if he stuck around for another year or two. He was obviously a fantastic servant to the Tyrone cause over the years, himself and Sean, his brother. Colin Kavanagh, he coming out with them quotes, but they've moved on fairly well without him. Daniel?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I suppose Colin's had a crazy good career as well in his own right, and nearly, I suppose, defined a new role in the J of the sweeper in front of the full back line. But I think Tyrone, the way they're playing at the moment, they're nearly gone beyond that. Their athleticism and their pace is, it's very impressive. And you'd have to say Mayo is too. And I think that's one thing that struck me in both semi-finals, the ability defensively, especially, to get back and cover with pace and then break with pace, and move the ball quickly up the other side of the pitch was probably as good as it's been in a while. The Dubs are more methodical, but in the way they do it, and that's brilliant to watch in their own way. But I just thought the abandon that Mayo and Tyrone played both defensively, I suppose, in their kind of group tackling and turnovers in the corners and then breaking so fast. I'd imagine if Colin was still there, he wouldn't be on that starting team anymore by the looks of the young lads that are there. And that's another thing that draws you to Tyrone when you look at their bench that comes on. Like the last day was McShane, probably, if he wasn't injured, would be in line for the player of the year. Tierney McCann, Derek Havinan, Mark Bradley. They've a serious bench at the moment, and they've match winners littered all over their bench as well. And another day, Derek Havinan could have had 1-3. Like, he probably got turned over a couple of times and missed the shot and goal, but he was still very dangerous. And like they have a lot of weaponry on the bench. Just the one thing that struck me about Tyrone is their intelligence of when to dive in and when not to dive in. I think Matty Donnelly's tackle there for, I think it was McShane's break, like that wasn't a fluke tackle. Like, that was measured from about 10 yards away across the pitch and just read it. Like, and defensively they're very intelligent, and that they're going to need that the next day. And I suppose shutting down Tommy Conroy, and I think Tyrone would be quite happy to see Aidan O'Shea going to full forward line. I think they'd cope with it handy enough. I think they'd just drop men back in front of him and they'd crowd him out. And it'll be even a case of the same thing. I think probably just one behind them, one in front, and blot them out, and that would set up all their attacks. I think Mayo are going to have to find a different job for Aidan O'Shea. Maybe try it a couple of times, maybe, but in the main, I'd be keeping Aidan away from the full forward line, being honest.
That'll be very interesting to see how that lines up. So suppose, lads, we can go through the Mayo team and who can make the difference, what kind of the matchups are going to be, and we'll go through it and see how we get on. We could start off with Mayo. Obviously, Rob Henley's between the sticks. He had a fantastic game against Dublin in the semi-final. He really stepped up and got Mayo over the line. So Daniel Goulding, Rob Henley will have a big impact and big game this Saturday, you want to think?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think we talked about it before, showed super resilience, like was off the panel at some stages through his career, and kept plugging away and got his just rewards the last day, kicking the leveler, and for his sake, and like you'd hope that it's a very kind of straightforward performance for him the next day, and comes up with a couple of saves, and be interesting to see now the two lads. Morgan as well, wasn't he? I know he kicked one boomer, but he was under pressure in the second half with his 45s as well. So it'll be interesting to see will the two goalies have much of a say in the game from out the field, from long range point or free taking. So be an interesting one to watch, and I suppose for both keepers and any keeper going into the final, you want a straightforward day for them really, because it's the one place where you can't get away with mistakes.
Kevin, obviously, Mayo's full backline, Páirc O'Hare, he'll more than likely be picking up the Darren McCurry, number 13 there. So that's an intriguing matchup. Obviously, we've seen in the semi-final, Páirc O'Hare, he just never give up. Darren McCurry shooting lights out so far this year, Kevin. So a couple of interesting matchups already.
Yeah, it's a brilliant matchup. Let's be honest, for the neutral to see that two runners for the player of the year for me. McCurry's been consistently very, very good this year. I know from not trying to be ultra-centric about this, I've watched McCurry on many, many occasions. He is a brilliant centre of gravity. Very, very difficult player to mark. And again, like the lads were saying earlier, maybe about Colin Kavanagh, McCurry's really embraced this new sort of era in Tyrone football, this openness, the ball coming into him quickly, very, very difficult to mark. He's accurate, his confidence is up. And you know what? You see when he's playing like that, you can see it. It's infectious throughout the Tyrone team. By the way, he's holding out a guy in Mark Bradley who gave Cian O'Sullivan the run around the other year in the All-Ireland final. So that should tell you how top of the game McCurry is at the minute. My only issue about this is we're talking here about corner forwards, and the lads will come on to talk about this when we go out the field. When you're a manager planning, when you're James Horan planning how you mark McCurry, you stop the ball getting in quickly. And that's all about the work that happens in your half forward line and your middle of the park and what they do. Tyrone will do that all day long to Mayo, and Mayo have got to mirror that. These guys in the Tyrone half forward line, these guys in the middle of the park for Tyrone, they're not going to win player of the years. But I tell you what, they are absolute workhorses, and they will, like Conor Myler's performance last day around. People say Conor Myler started cornerback. That's fair enough. He was lined out of 10. Myler can play anywhere in the pits for you. He's an absolute workhorse. He's a dog of war. He will go at you all day long. He will be in around you when you're kicking the ball. He will make you make mistakes. So what Mayo got to do is they got to stop that supply into McCurry. Okay, they're not going to do it all day long, but they've got to try as much as possible. In part, they've got a great marker on him, a guy who obviously we spoke about earlier, is very, very keyed up. He's, in all due respect to him, he's a bit of a rookie, but he's coming through this, with, look, the shackles are off for this young lad. He doesn't care who he's in. His confidence is up, but he needs a bit of protection in front of him. They also need to limit their free kicks. That's the other big thing I would say about Mayo in this All-Ireland final. Be very wary what you give to Tyrone. Morgan will kick long, McCurry will kick short, and they will punish you all day long. They've been doing it all season. So just be aware what the half forward, the midfield, the half back line are doing and the pressure into them. One-on-one, it's a great matchup, but I think Páiric's job could be made much easier by the work rate out the field. But yeah, an intriguing matchup, just depending on how much ball it goes in and how quickly it goes in to McCurry.
Interesting. Obviously, we can look on to Lee Keegan there, Kevin. Obviously, it'll be interesting to see what role he does play, because what way would you kind of play Lee Keegan? Because obviously you want him up the pitch, getting forward, bound forward, scoring points. But at the end of the day, you need to kind of get back to the house. You have Conor Myler running at you, Niall Sludden, Darren McCurry, the potential of Conor McKenna, Colin McShane. So, you'd want Lee Keegan getting up the pitch, but you'd want him helping out at home as well.
Yeah, well, I think Tyrone might match him up with Sludden. That's what I think Tyrone might do with Keegan. the two Daniels will have a say in this, and I'd love them to come in this where they feel fit. This is a brilliant subplot in its own. How James Horan manages Aidan O'Shea at the top of the pitch and Lee Keegan at the back of the pitch. What a subplot. I mean, as interested and enthusiastic GA people we are, we've got to see this. Is he going to bring him out the centre back? Is he going to bring him to the left half back? Is he going to play him in the full back line? Personally, for me, again, coming back to my game plan, and it's all or nothing. I mean, people can give me a right barrage next weekend. If I'm a Mayo person, I want us on the front foot. I want Lee Keegan and my half back line. I want to be piercing them early. I want to say to somebody like Sludden, and Sludden is a guy who's not given enough credit. Sludden can play wing back. He can play centre half forward for you. If you put Sludden on the back foot and you put Tyrone in the back foot, for Sludden coming forward, he likes to run from deep. Bit like Petey Hart likes to run from deep. Bit like Mailer. Bit like Matty Hart actually. They like to run from deep, so they like to get behind the ball. I would love to see Keegan forcing Sludden back as much as possible if that's who to play on him. But for me, Lee Keegan has to play in the half back line. He has to. The days of Mayo now, the days of actually for James Horan to turn around and say, we'll play him in the full back line, look at their full forward line. They're over. He's got one chance. He's got one chance here on Sunday, and he goes with the strongest line going forward. He doesn't worry about what Tyrone have and say. He lets others deal with that.
Daniel Hussey, what would be your opinion on that?
Yeah, well, I'll go back to the Padraig O'Hara matchup. If Colin McShane starts, is Padraig O'Hara the man for Colin McShane, or would you stick with him on McCurry? Because, I don't know, you made some good points, and I actually think O'Hara and McCurry be a great battle, but I think O'Hara's made for that sort of star name, Colin McShane, and there's no guarantee he will start, but I'm guessing he probably will. I think Tyrone have to start him in the full forward line. It's just a case of who they take out is the only situation where he might stay on the bench, but I think that dictates a lot that O'Hara will obviously pick up McCurry if McShane doesn't start, but if McShane starts, I don't know who you put on him if O'Hara isn't available, that sort of thing. With Lee Keegan, he can honestly pick up any one of, I'd say anywhere up until the wing back line, to be honest with you. I'd hammer the hammer and put him on someone like, I don't know, Kieran McGeary for 5-10 minutes and follow him around the pitch, because McGeary was getting on so much ball in around that middle pitch that if Lee Keegan wants to wander around with him for 10 minutes, you saw what the job he did on Jeremy Connolly over those couple of All-Ireland finals. So anywhere from there to Conor McKenna, I think they'll do a lot of switching. And the one thing, there's definitely a reason Lee Keegan's not been in the half-back line over the last few years, and it's probably down to the legs. So realistically, if that's the case, he will have to spend a large, or at least some part of the game in the full-back line marking somebody, whether they go for a situation where for the first 40, 50 minutes he's in that full-back line, and then not too dissimilar to what happened against Dublin. I don't know if that was the plan or it just sort of happened like that, where Lee Keegan suddenly got on a lot more ball and was able to run forward. Maybe that happens, but I would be pretty Aidan O'Shea in 14 or 11. Daniel made some good points as to why he probably shouldn't play 14. I would probably definitely put him there at some point, but I would accept that point that he probably needs to be around the middle if he has the legs for it. But also Lee Keegan, what you do with Lee Keegan, when do you let him go? There has to be a reason he hasn't been playing half back line since 2019. So realistically, he probably doesn't have the legs for that for 70 minutes, but for 20-minute spells, either at the end of the first half or second half, there's definitely a case for Lee Keegan to have the shackles off. But the matchups will become clearer when the team gets made. I have a feeling that they'll name Colin McShane on the bench and then maybe throw him in to start 30 minutes before throwing, sort of thing, but maybe the highest number they can think of, 26 on his back or something, to try and hide him in plain sight, sort of thing, that way. But particularly because it's a new enough thing, Tyrone being an All-Ireland final, especially under this management, that they might just do a few of that. But that kind of mess and stuff. But yeah, it'll all come down to whether McShane starts and the Lee Keegan thing is fascinating, because again, I like everyone, I think it's the most obvious thing to say, he's definitely should be half back, but there's definitely some sort of reason why ever since the 19 semi-final, or that year anyway, he's been in the cornerback or full back line under James Horan.
And I think, just to follow on from Daniel's point there, I think some of it's out of necessity. I think they have to, because they don't have man markers in the full back line. When you look at their starting backs the last day, your Padraig O'Hara, Lee Keegan, Stephen Cohen, Plunkett, Durkin and McLaughlin, 5 of them are probably half backline players, and Lee Keegan is probably, and Paddy, realistically, Lee Keegan and Paddy Durkin are probably your 2 best man markers in the team as well, but you want to play them up the field. So I think it's a combination of Lee's probably getting a bit older, but also I think it's out of necessity. I think they have to do it to shore up the back line.
Have we all forgot about Brenton Harrison?
Yeah, and look, he only came on. I suppose he was injured, and that's
Come
the
on,
problem, isn't
guys,
it?
come on.
Well,
All-star cornerback, and Daniel makes a good point. I'm not cutting across you, Daniel Goodwin, but Daniel Hussey makes a very, very good point about Tyrone have this option of firing two big full forwards in, and that is they can put Kennedy in there if they want and put McShane out the midfield, or they can put McShane and McKenna in there who can both win their own ball. And McKenna's not overly big, by the way, guys. He's about 5'8", 5'9". If you look at his thing there, he's not overly massive, for a guy who's been to the rules. But Harrison might be a guy that, if that's what you're saying to me, Daniel Hussey, about Porrick going in there and marking somebody like McShane, Harrison might be your guy then to mark Darren McCurry. Look, he didn't become a bad player overnight. This guy was an all-star a couple of years back, so.
To be fair, I think it was he'd only played a club game before that semi-final. That's why he had a long-term injury. I'd say that's why he's forgotten about it as opposed to form, I think. But it's a big one to throw him in straight into the final. Maybe I know he's got a week's or 4 weeks prep, but I don't want to be a Mayo man tempting fate.
But yeah, just on Lee Keegan, then would he pick up if you do have Porrick O'Hara on McCurry, and Daniel makes a good point, like it's not just, I think it's a combination of the two. I think it's a combination of the legs, but also it's a great point that Mayo, like he's probably their next best full back for want of, like they're all wing backs. Paddy Durkman, Owen McLaughlin, Plunke, and Stephen Cohen to a certain extent. So just Lee Keegan, then he'd probably be a better match for maybe McShane, and then O'Hara on McCurry, or you could switch that up depending on how it's going. But yeah, and Harrison if he's fit. But yeah, there's just so many these, we always sometimes get too caught up in matchups, and after 5-10 minutes the game's just all over the place. Well, particularly in extra time and the end of last 20 minutes of all games in intercounty, it seems it's just a bit of manic, particularly those two All-Ireland semi-finals where everyone was playing everywhere. Like, so yeah, it's great to see, I got that matchup right for the throw-in, but they might never mark each other for the rest of the game, sort of thing. So it'll be very fascinating.
I think this game more than ever, to be honest with you, more than any this season, is going to be key on matchups. Absolutely key, more than any other game. Let's look at the other end of the pitch. Hampshire is, do you stop Hampshire going forward, Lee Keegan wise, because he's so good going forward, and you put McNamee on Aidan O'Shea at the edge of the square, and then on the other side of it, you've obviously, you look at Tommy Conroy in the form he's in, who picks him up, then do you put Hampshire on him, because Hampshire like Muslim, Hampshire, maybe these guys don't know, but brilliant amateur boxer, great frame of a guy, very, very fit, but also a good ball player. So do you limit him at the back by saying you look after Aidan O'Shea all day, or do you actually let him go forward a bit? Because even with being team captain, he's a big source of inspiration this last 4, 5, 6 years for Tyrone moving forward. He can play ball, he plays in around the middle of the park for his club. So, these matchups are absolutely key going forward into Saturday.
And even Tyrone, like a lot of their scores have come from defence, either be it their half-back line, sometimes their full-back line not getting tracked. So it's like the old Lee Keegan against Dermot Connolly thing, where like Lee Keegan used to score 1-2 off Dermot Connolly. It's amazing when you say that, like incredible. That's the definition of, obviously that's from the half-back line, but the Tyrone, particularly the fact they're relying on scores from defence. Now, I personally think that'll change in the final, given that McShane will be up there from the start. You think that can they outscore their man sort of stuff sort of going on. But yeah, it's absolutely fascinating what sort of matches will happen, and it does that change during the game based on what's happening.
Definitely. We go up the pitch on the Mayo side of things. Matthew Moran, he's had a cracking season so far. Daniel Goulding, he's been the leader for this Mayo team. He's got some absolutely vital scores throughout the whole season. So, Mr. Moran, want to perform this Saturday, Daniel Goulding?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's the nearly favourite player there at the moment, assuming Mayo would win. Self and Lee Keegan probably, and Tommy Conroy all in the show, but yeah, he's had a super year. Do you know what? I suppose he's come of age really. He was showed brilliant potential over the last couple of years and kind of was in and out of the team a bit, but he's really taken up the leadership role this year, and he's a bear of a man, and he's a crazy athlete as well. And he did a number on Fenton 4 weeks, or was it 3 weeks ago, whenever it was now, and they're going to have a huge game off him again and probably chip in with a couple of scores also. As Kevin alluded to earlier, yeah, the middle is going to be very interesting. Nearly 4 kind of rookies in a certain extent, and it'll be interesting to see the way Tyrone play. Will they limit Ryan's influence on the game that he's had over the last couple of matches? So, but look, you can analyse this game 1,000 ways, and it's kind of a head scratcher in a lot of ways. Like we can't agree on one matchup, not mind what the matchups are going to be all over the pitch. You know, it's going to be very interesting. And then you have the added, will they put O'Shea over on the middle as well for a bank of 3, because I suppose a lot of the time Tyrone play defensively, they get men back in numbers, but they break in numbers as well, and it's all about legs. And you know, Kevin alluded to earlier, if you don't work your socks off around the middle 8 here, it's, you know, Mayo could be in trouble if they can't match Tyrone's intensity around the middle 8. And you know, that's probably one of the big battles of the weekend, the middle 8 really. And they Mayo overpowered Dublin, but Dublin weren't really at it in the second half, and I don't think that's going to happen with Tyrone. So look, it's going to be very intriguing.
And Daniel as well, like Kevin McLaughlin, he's been in numerous finals, and fair play to him for sticking around. He's one of the fellas that did stick around from all them kind of beating Mayo teams in the All-Ireland finals. That man's been there. He's been on these big occasions. You know, he hasn't got over the line. So even for him himself, this is a huge day, Daniel Goulding. Yeah,
look, and he's probably another lad with a lot of legs on the clock and has gone through well a number of times. But I suppose the one thing you'd always say about Kevin McLaughlin is years gone past when they've needed a score, he's generally delivered on it. And he's always one of the fellas that kind of stands up when it's needed. And I think he got an outrageous score again, the one against Dublin, when Dermot O'Connor kicked the ball in. Like, that was not a hard kick, and that was, I think, to level the game even. And you know, he's very crafty, he's cynical, he knows how to slow the game down. He's a very intelligent player and gets on very good ball in dangerous areas. And yeah, so I want to take a bit of minding with him. And again, it's kind of, can Tommy Conroy be the fella then, and these fellas around him, you know, get off Kevin McLaughlin in good positions and finish scores. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. I don't know. I think it'll be a different game to what Mayo were used to against Dublin in the second half. I don't think they're going to have those big holes to punch into if they turn Dublin over. I think Tyrone will be well set, and then this will be a case of can Mayo slow down the game and get the Kevin McLaughlins on it to control the game a bit and be patient, and you know, not get the urge to go into kind of areas where there's 3 Tyrone men. And it's going to be a game of the minds in many ways, and patience is going to dictate an awful lot. And look, you think Kevin McLaughlin will be one of the lads that will be well used to that.
Just on Kevin McLaughlin as well, like, wasn't it Tyrone? He's got that winning point that kept Mayo in Division 1 when he took the 24 steps and hit it over the bar then, sensationally, and the ref said nothing. And actually, Daniel mentioned, yeah, well, listen, anything to get Mayo out of Division 1 in those days, so Tyrone weren't our rivals. But and everyone, like, and geez, on my own podcast and on the social media, we put the still of Dermot O'Connor keeping that ball in. But it was Kevin McLaughlin that hit it over the bar, and it was some score, and he does always pop up with that either big score. So Kevin McLaughlin won't go out and shoot 4 points in the All-Ireland final now on Saturday, but he might come up with that crucial score again that just out of nowhere, because he's been running all day, he'll just present the chance, and that left foot is usually pretty solid. So his kind of impact will be key based on just popping up with that score, as well as all the running he does around that wing forward. But something that Daniel said in terms of earlier on about Mayo's shot selection, which I hadn't really thought of too much, because in these big finals they're always playing either Dublin or Kerry, that obviously have fantastic defensive systems, Dublin more so than Kerry, but they kind of go at each other and play almost for the good of the game. Sort of, we'll have not a shootout, but we'll run at each other, shootout. Tyrone have a defensive system in place where they'll push you out to the sidelines, they'll try and bottle you up, but even if Mayo kind of keep the ball, the middle will always be full. So you've got to stop the likes of Paddy Durkin, who I think is an unbelievable player, but he's always, at least once in a big game, he'll hit a ball and just land it short of the keeper because of poor shot selection. So that's vital, that the likes of anyone around that middle, wing forward, wing back, you've got to while go for your shots, you've also got to balance that with making sure it's the right person at the right time, because that just feeds into Tyrone's turnovers. And like we said earlier, I think 2-9 from turnovers Tyrone got against Kerry. So.
Definitely. Kevin McGurty, goals are huge at finals, and Mayo have plenty of lads that can rattle it back in the net. Tommy, Conroy, Rory O'Donoghue, there could be a goal in them, boys.
Are they huge in finals? Tell Mayo people that, because they haven't won one too often. They've scored plenty of goals. Bramley serves me right. Yeah, no, look, Mayo have good potent forwards, don't get me wrong. I'll come back to this when we summarise at the end, but I don't think they've as good as forwards as Tyrone, in my opinion. Look, Conroy's an exceptionally gifted player, let's be honest. He's come in this last couple of years, really, really impressed. I think they beat down in the first league game of this year, off the top of my head, 2-21. They absolutely hockeyed down anyway, down in Castlebar, I think it was. And he was so potent in that game. Started the way the game as he means to continue. Big issue this weekend, Tyrone full backline is really, really good. Not only going forward, but defensively, they're a good unit. And, Conroy's not going to get many chances this weekend, so he's going to have to be absolutely ruthless when he does get them. Again, a lot of that's going to revolve around where does Aidan O'Shea play, and is he going to be a target man inside, maybe lay the ball off to him? Who knows what's going to happen there. If we look back at the final that Donegal win against Mayo, the first ball that was in, somebody put a video up on Twitter this week of it, and it was absolutely brilliant, the angle it was at. The first ball that goes into Michael Murphy, big high catch, rattles in that first couple of minutes. I would love to see maybe O'Shea in there from the throw in and maybe lump a ball in to see what's happening in there, because Tyrone full back line, just test him out earlier on, and maybe Conroy and the other young fella in the other corner coming off him maybe. But, I think for the full forward line of Mayo this weekend, it's going to be a difficult 70 minutes. I don't think they're going to get quick ball in. Tyrone are going to work so hard. You've seen what happened to Kerry. They're going to be in around the tackle. So Conroy especially is just going to have to bide his time for when he gets his one-on-ones with his man, take him on, get a score or get a foul. So it might be a frustrating week for him. I don't maybe think that we're going to see just what we have seen of him so far this year, if I'm honest with you, because Tyrone will have a plan built around stopping that full forward line, and they will work hard to implement that. Just on a point that Daniel made, just not to prolong this, Kevin McLaughlin's been going for many years, right? And he's in and out a wee bit. He was taking frees at a time and maybe missed one or two at crucial stages in Croke Park for Mayo. The one thing that Kevin McLaughlin does have, and is vital in any player in the modern game, is he's a lot of pace and a lot of energy. And see, to break this Tyrone defence down at the weekend, I think Mayo will need that. They'll need the Durkins running from deep. They'll need Lee Keegan running from deep. Daniel Hussey was talking about Tyrone pushing you out to the wing. Yes, that's okay. Push it out the wing. But see, when you need to split the defence, you need someone like Kevin McLaughlin coming through the middle. And that's the one thing he brings to that team. He will always win you frees. He will always give you 100%. And he has great pace. And that's why he's prolonged so long as a player. His pace is a crucial factor this weekend that Mayo possibly will need against this Tyrone defence.
And it's important just on that Mayo can run the ball. I know Kerry have actually, up until the Tyrone game, I thought they were improving their running game, but I think that kind of that theory was dismissed fairly rapidly when Tyrone, as Sean Kavanagh says, God forbid any team would lay a hand on Kerry. Like, it seemed that as soon as someone tackled them, they didn't know what to think. But Mayo do have the legs based on the fact they've always been able to match Dublin both physically and the way they run it. That Mayo will definitely, they'll just run at Tyrone a little bit better than Kerry, and it's just a case of whether they can break that defence with a run off the shoulder or something like that. So it's pretty fascinating in that sense.
Kevin, I was saying to Daniel a few weeks ago that Enda McKinley wanted to see a very, very boring performance with Niall Morgan against Kerry. Niall Morgan would want to be asleep in the goal on Saturday, Kevin.
I don't think Niall Morgan will be asleep in the goal at all, knowing Niall Morgan. He'll be up the high dough. He'll be looking to get up the field. He'll be shouting at his defenders. He'll be looking to hit 65-yard points. Yeah, but Niall has a very important part to play here at the weekend. He's got to judge very quickly. I mean, we talk about how important goalkeepers are, and the two Daniels will agree with me on this. Niall's got to gauge from the first kick out. as does his opposite number at the other end. You know, what's happening in around midfield, what's happening in the half back line very, very quickly. It's all right, a manager running down the line and saying to you, now, don't be kicking it out there anymore. He's got to see the strengths and weaknesses in around midfield with these 4 young guys. He's got to see whether they're winning ball or not. So, he's an important part to play this week with regards to that. And I think the kick out, I think the kick out's going to be key. I think Tyrone might concede the kick out to Mayo. I do see that. I think there'll always be somebody there for Mayo for a short kick out. And then, coming up the field, I don't know if Mayo are going to go full press. I don't know. So that'll be up for Niall to judge. He will obviously, as I said to you again, as a player, you're knowing Monday of the match week. If you're playing Tyrone Ulster Championship match or whatever else, if you can see the free inside 50 yards, Niall Morgan's coming up. So, Mayo have got to be very, very disciplined in the tackle. And that's how big a player he is now. You're thinking about that. You're thinking about that when you're playing Monaghan, how disciplined you are in the tackle, because these guys will punish you all day long. But Morgan's a good keeper. He's a big, big influence on this Tyrone team. He's one of the seasoned campaigners. This may be, again, he may be one of these guys that may have this unique chance to win his first and only All-Ireland.
Just on the Tyrone kick out, I think Mayo are going to have to press it. I think it's the one time in the game where they're going to get Tyrone set up in somewhat as 6 defenders, and that if they turn it over, the pitch is open for them. I think Tyrone can't get away again with losing a lot of their own kick out. Kerry should have made way more hay with it when they got all those balls and when they won all those kickouts. And I think it's something Mayo did it to Dublin for years. They used to push up and they used to even get Clucks in a bit of trouble. So I'd imagine they'll go full press again on Tyrone and see can they get some scores after kickout.
And it'd be very interesting just on that, like everyone's kind of giving out in a bit of hindsight, I suppose, a small bit, but Kerry not going long for any kick out because they're given the short kick out. I suppose it's you're going against natural instincts that if you've an extra man there to not pass it to him, but there must be something in that Rob Henley might say, lads, we're just going to go for a long kick out. Let's make it 50-50 because if we win it, suddenly we're up against a set defence there and that kind of gives us the opportunity. And I kind of agree with Daniel, they will press, whether they press all the time or not, who knows, but Mayo will definitely want to have the game on their terms in some sense because it felt like Tyrone gave Kerry the short kick out and they just started pushing them over the sideline. Pretty simple. Mayo might try a bit of that where they might give some kickouts to Tyrone and then try and do some sort of their own press. But it's pretty fascinating. And everyone's talking about Niall Morgan coming up the field. Watching the Dublin Mayo game, I was at it. Rob Henley was ready. He was at one stage, he was on a 65 for a kick out or very close to it. He was ready for kind of putting the hands up. I don't know if he was going to go for it or not, but I wouldn't rule out Rob Henley doing something a bit mad in an All-Ireland final, like in terms of trying to go up and win a kick out or something. But especially if Mayo go for that full press, yeah.
Yeah, Jesus, God forbid he did. Daniel Goulding, Ronan McNamee might have his work cut out this weekend. He could be on the likes of Aidan O'Shea, possibly Tommy Conroy. He's picked up some serious players in his past. He did a sterling job with Mr. Clifford last year, but I know David still scored 7 or 8 points. But still, Ronan McNamee is a great leader on this Tyrone team, Daniel Goulding.
Absolutely, yeah. Look, and Kevin alluded to it already, the whole full back line they're a tough full back line and they give you trouble defensively. Obviously, they're good man markers, and they also give you trouble going the other way. I think the whole full back line scored the last set against Kerry. Even with Clifford, I think 3 or 4 of the scores Clifford got, only David Clifford would take them on. Not to mind score them, and I think McNamee was on his boot, and Clifford was just still getting them off. And I don't think even if Aidan O'Shea wins ball off McNamee, he'll be able to do what Clifford does. So it'll be more a case of recycling the ball and waiting for a runner. I think the beauty of Tyrone as well is, look, once you hold up the forward initially, they have an extra man back straight away, and the speed of the lads getting back is frightening. And I suppose then the beauty of them, it's like, I remember back in the day, the first time we played Donegal in Championship up in Croke Park, they nearly took turns to bomb forward, and you're like it was never seen the likes of before. But this Tyrone team have the same thing. They're obviously tuned into when to take their breaks and when to get fellas up the pitch, and that's why you saw the 3 lads scoring the last day. They all ghosted into scoreable positions and no one marking them. That's the confusion you create when you turn over the ball fast. And yeah, it's like I'd look at a lot of the time, and even the fast ball going into McCurry the last day, it didn't actually suit Tyrone because he'd win it. He was under pressure winning it, and then there was 2 men on him straight away coming back, filtering back, and that's why this game lends me to even thinking it's going to be really a kind of really defensive game on both sides. And as we talked about, waiting for the half-back lines of both teams to punch holes as opposed to kind of these expensive kick-passing games. And I think we could be in for a very defensive final. No, I could be totally wrong, but I don't know. I just have it in my gut that possession will be 9/10 of the game here, and it'll be a game of turnovers and breaking fast.
Oh, Jesus, Daniel, do not say that to us.
Sorry. I'm probably totally wrong. I'm probably talking through my arse.
It wouldn't be like the TheJMacPodcast lads to talk through their arse, Daniel, so don't worry. Daniel Gooley, this half-back line, Tiernan McCann, Kieran McGeary, Peter Hart, serious potential. Tiernan McCann came on the last day, but if this half-back line does start Daniel Gooley, that's a serious prospect.
Yeah, it is looking. You know what? They're nearly, some of them are backs playing as forward, or their forwards playing as backs, and are obviously very disciplined defensively as well. But again, as we've kind of alluded to, can do desperate damage going forward. Like the last day, even I suppose Peter Hart chipped in with a point. I think Frank Burns was around the place as well for a lot of it, chipped in with a point. McGeary goes back there. It's the way they play it's very hard to know who's playing anywhere or certain parts of the game. They break in waves, they defend in waves. It's like organised chaos in many respects, and it's very hard to deal with. That's, I think, like we've already talked about it, but like that middle eight is going to be very interesting, and it's going to be the winning and losing of the game the next day. And I think like the Mayo lads have a big challenge. They won't have, I suppose, as lethargic and kind of sluggish team as Dublin were in the second half the last day. And like even like they're able to play it so many ways. Like Moyler was playing wing forward the whole year. Next thing goes back and totally shuts off Body Clifford, and like that whole half back line, they're very selfless. Like Peter Hart would have been seen as a scoring forward up to this year, and they tried him in the half back line. I know he's fitted in there seamlessly, and they're able to play it every way you want, and I suppose they're refreshing to watch. And as I said, it's if they can reach the heights of the work rate again, could be a long day for the Mayo half forward line.
Can I just say something, John, there, and maybe Daniel Hussey will agree with me in this. Daniel Goulding has just made a point, right? And he doesn't know how good a point it is in certain ways. For being Ulster Shantrick about this in Tyrone, all as we talked about was, will Petey perform? Will Paddy perform? Paddy Hampshire? Will Niall Morgan perform? Will Matty Donnelly perform? All of a sudden, these guys have just become by stories, because this is a full-rounded team now in Tyrone. This is back to the great Tyrone team of 08, where, one day Mulligan doesn't turn up, but O'Neill, Dewar and McGuigan do. The next day, them three don't turn up, but all of a sudden, somebody like Colin McCullough comes off the bench, or Canavan, does his usual stuff. For the last number of years, there's been this focus on Matty and Petey in particular, and where you're going to play them, and, are they better as forwards and backs? They're just players in this team now. It's just a team. All cogs in the wheel now are starting to turn in the right direction, and it doesn't matter. Petey's noticed his place in the team. Matty's noticed his place in the team. And that's what I think about this Tyrone team in terms of its development. It's just, it's 15, 18 brilliant footballers.
Mm.
And it's the focus is on the team rather than on the individual.
Yeah, John, I was fascinated with Daniel saying the comparison with Donegal and the defenders taking a break, and like it's such an obvious thing to think of and say, but I don't think I've ever heard a structured kind of like, you go now, you're going to do the first 5 minutes of running and you do the next 5, as in do a burst in the first 5 minutes. And yeah, the fact that there's definitely similarities with that and this Tyrone full back line, like they always pop up with scores. It wasn't just the Kerry game, it was the Monaghan game before that. They're always. And I think at times they almost had to rely on that based on, obviously the likes of Colin McShane not being around, that McCurry was their main danger man. That now they have McShane, McCurry up there, they'll get the scores, but they'll also have the defensive options as well. And if they're taking breaks, like as a forward, you're struggling there because you don't know who's going to be next, sort of thing. So pretty fascinating stuff.
Definitely is. Daniel Hussey, obviously Tyrone's bench the last day really won the game for them. Compared to Mayo's bench, Mayo have a nice young bench, bit of experience there. You've Colin Boyle, Brendan Harrison, and the Heston come off. Jordan Flynn kicked the point the last day. Darren Cohen, so much experience on the Mayo bench, lots of experience on the Tyrone bench. This really could come down to whoever's bench is stronger, Daniel Hussey.
Yeah, I think 100% comes down to the bench, and it's a very tough one to decide between the two. Like, I'd marginally favour Mayo based on the numbers. Like, do anyone know how many players Mayo played against Dublin?
No.
23. It's hard to believe, isn't it? They've 26. I've counted it 3 or 4 times now. I haven't. When I've fact checked it myself. If anyone wants to, but it's 23. I did it like 4 or 5 times. When you're doing it by yourself, you're like, this has to be correct before you say it. So 99% sure they used 23 players, and I know like the extra time you're obviously allowed the 3 extra subs. So I think that's all their subs they're allowed to use. Because at the black card one, so now it's back to 5, isn't it, for championship? But 23 players is a lot. Like, considering like Mayo did not have a 23 players to take on the Dubs a few years ago, they now seem to have a bit more of a squad built, and that's credit to James Horan, because he hasn't really had the time the last 2 years in championship with the knockout format to try these players. So I think a big part of the National League campaigns over the last couple of years and in 2019 was get as many players involved as possible, and that's where the likes of Padraig O'Hora come, who have obviously starting. But you look who came off the bench there. Enda Hession had a phenomenal game when he came on. Like, will he start? Probably leave him on the bench personally, but he was like, it's very hard not to start him, to be fair. James Carr, Jordan Flynn, who's always had potential at underage. I know he kind of frustrates a lot of Mayo fans because there's a serious player in there. And I think it was summed up with his performance the last day. I was just telling my brother Sean as I was watching the Hill, geez, Jordan Flynn's flying, and then he had the ball. And we were just saying, here he is now, and he just gave the ball away. And I was like, that's Jordan Flynn for you. Like, it just hasn't quite happened for him. Like, he does something amazing and then just frustrated. And listen, I know I've been there, I do that all the time myself. But you've got Darren Cohen, you've got Brendan Harrison. Like Daniel said, there's a lot more options for Mayo that they've had in previous years. But equally with Tyrone, like, and obviously it's almost helped them in one way is that Colin McShane, they could have used them on the bench because it's allowed their starting players to get more experience. That I would normally be an advocate of, you have to hold something in reserve, like a key player. But on this occasion, I do think Colin McShane's just too good not to start. And I think they have to play him. And I think it will happen where he'll have number 26 and he'll be starting alongside McCurry. But then I'm struggling as to who you take back or who you hold in reserve. But leaving that aside, like, you've Tiernan McCann to come on, you've Derek Canavan, who essentially, he set up the goal for Colin McShane, albeit it was, poor enough finish that it was good enough that they got a rebound from it. So they've definitely, both benches are actually pretty strong, and like Mayo probably have it in terms of more players that can play. But I do think Tyrone have whoever they leave in reserve for Colin McShane, or if it is, like, imagine if Colin McShane is on the bench, like, Jesus, like, when are you going to bring him on? Do you unleash him? Like, you've some neck here, Tyrone turning up to Croke Park against Mayo in an All-Ireland final and leaving your best player the last 10 years, or in my opinion anyway, since the 2018 on the bench, like a professional footballer in Australia, so that's a good subplot. As a manager, I'd be tempted, but I do personally think they'll start. But they're 2 fascinating benches, but I think the one guarantee, like Daniel says, whether I think it'd be a little bit more high scoring, but whatever happens, I just can't see anyway. It's not 2 or 3 points in it with 5-10 minutes to go. That means not your first or second sub will win the game, but your third or fourth or your fifth, whoever that may be. So Mayo hold it in terms of the amount of players they can bring in, but Jesus, like, Derek Kavanagh was amazing when he came on for Tyrone. So like, they definitely have good options there as well. So it's pretty even in that sense.
You make a good point, Daniel Hussey. I'm just watching Kevin in the corner of the screen there. He's watching the golf and him not paying attention to you. So same old story.
Leon Maguire, he's perfectly entitled.
I'm absolutely listening to all of it. I mean, the one thing I would say about Cal McShane coming in this weekend, you heard it here first, guys. Don't be surprised if they do a Peter Canavan with Cal McShane. They bring him on, then they bring him off, then they bring him on.
Yeah, that's
I wouldn't be surprised. Deur's been around a few corners. Let's remember, so's Fergal Logan. So I wouldn't be surprised if they've something up their sleeve like that.
I'm already sold. That's exactly what they'll do. They'll play him first 25 to 30 minutes. Maybe they might take him off for 20, 25 minutes and keep him for the last 10, 15 minutes. That's what they'll do. That's it.
Don't be surprised. The Tyrone boys might have a few tricks up their sleeves. Who knows? Daniel Hussey is an absolute credit to James Horan time and time again. I think I mentioned this to you before. Bringing team after team, not getting over the line. Saturday is a massive chance for them. Hat tip to Mr. Horan.
Unbelievable. And does he get the credit he deserves? Probably not. Like everyone in GA world knows he's a good manager, but if you compare him to Jim McGuinness, I think people would still have Jim McGuinness over James Horan. Now, I don't want to upset any Donegal fans, and Jim McGuinness was amazing in his time, but the job James Horan has done, the longevity of it, and 2 different years essentially, because 2011 to 2014 was not necessarily, well, it was defensive football. It was the Jim McGuinness era, and Mayo competed, and I would have loved to have seen that Mayo team the second time around against Donegal in the 2014 All-Ireland final had the Limerick game gone different, which I was at, and like most Mayo games, there was a kick of a ball in it. But I've actually been more impressed with his second spell, because you're always unsure. I was like, they're going back to James Horan here. He's kind of been there, done that. He's given it all he could to Mayo, and the job he's done over the last 2 or 3 years has been phenomenal. Like I said, the fact is he's aware that they needed to do things a little bit different. The amount of retirements, like everyone talks about all those All-Ireland medals that Dublin were missing, but the amount of championship appearances in All-Ireland semi-finals and finals that Mayo were missing against the Dubs, and they still managed to get the job done, even when they did everything wrong for 40 or 50 minutes. You just got to give full credit to James Horan. And he, again, the Aidan O'Shea thing, I wouldn't have taken him off under any circumstances. I was absolutely shocked they did it, but look what happened when they did it. So, and now he's got that, again, not that he needed it, but he's just, nobody's bigger than the team here. But yeah, I think the job he's done in GA Circle is phenomenal. I think he deserves this All-Ireland. He really does. I'd be devastated for him if they don't get the job done against Tyrone, just based on like the fact they've beaten the Dubs. Something Daniel said earlier, I completely agree. When they were celebrating that semi-final win, I was caught up in the emotion myself, so I fully understand it. It's been a blessing in disguise that this is 4 weeks that's given them an ample opportunity. I think the 2-week turnaround suits Tyrone themselves, but I equally think this extra week or two that Mayo have had from that Dublin game has given them an opportunity to really get focused in on Tyrone. So, but yeah, James Horan, I think he's underappreciated in GA circles. I'd have him above Jim McGuinness. I'd have him almost, I'd have him below Jim McGavin in recent years in terms of the job he's done with this Mayo team. He just needs that All-Ireland, so I can start backing that up with a few stats and not get involved in any Twitter wars when everyone's like, where's his All-Ireland? And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, 100%. Daniel Goulding, not bad going by Fergalone and Brian Dewar to lead Toronto in All-Ireland final, win an Ulster Championship, especially after stepping in after Mickey Hart.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and I suppose in the league they tried out more attacking, expansive football, and they're after kind of getting the perfect blend now at the moment. As we talked about, the Kerry game down in Killarney probably was a big eye opener, or was it Tralee, whichever one it was a big eye opener for them. And you'd hear the rumours they were training that morning. I wouldn't buy into any of that. I just think it's one of those times where you go down to Kerry, and we've all been there, where they're absolutely lifting, and if you're 10% off your game, that's what they'll do to you. And look, I suppose the measure then is how do you respond to that, and they've responded in spades, and they've shown a lot of resiliency to get back to where they are. And I suppose look, they've won tight games the whole way through, and like that'll stand them in good stead. Like the tight game against Donegal, tight game against Monaghan, very tight game again the last day, maybe a game they shouldn't have won in some respects, and still got the result at the end. And how they've managed the whole, bar one comment, how they've managed the whole COVID thing as well. Like, in fairness, it's it's a credit to them in terms of how they've, like, I was listening to Pat Spillane saying we need information. Like, I was thinking the lads have handled this as best they can. Like, there should be nothing coming out about this. Like, and in fairness to them, they probably did a bit of a number on Kerry, but like Kerry would do the exact same thing if the shoe was on the other foot, and so would any management team worth their salt. And look, I think they've just made the right decisions all along since the championship started. And I suppose this is, we've all alluded, and Daniel's alluded strongly here, the big question for them now is, and it could win or lose them in All-Ireland, is what they do with Conor McShane. I suppose that's the next big one, and we'll only know after the game itself whether they've got it right or wrong.
We will indeed. Let's get into the fun bit. Who's going to win a Kevin McGarty?
I'm going to put my cards on the table straight away, and the two Daniels might laugh at me. There's 4 reasons why Tyrone are going to win it. 4 reasons. Daniel Hussey made a very good point earlier about Kevin McLaughlin and options being taken, and Paddy Durkin and options being taken. What really impressed me about Tyrone in the last game was their game management, their ball management with the ball when they were in possession, what they did with it, when they kicked it. For instance, I think it was Matty Donnelly gets the first point from a mark, kicking the ball when it was on, holding the ball retention all the time. So I think that they've got arguably the better natural footballers in their team, guys who think about the game, who will play to a system. And that was seen in the Kerry game at certain times. It did come under a bit of pressure here and there. Look, they were in support of each other, and their ball retention was good. So game management, I think Tyrone have the upper hand, in my opinion. The second thing is, and this is huge for this game, the intensity in the middle eight is absolutely vital. You've got people like Petey Hart, Conor Myler, when you've got Niall Sludden in around that middle eight who are going to work like dogs to put the pressure on, getting the ball into the full forward line of Mayo. You know, I see Tyrone maybe like an anaconda around their neck, you know, just strangling them. The third thing is, you know, the options that Tyrone have up front are just so much more impressive for me. Tyrone have maybe 12 different options to put up front. Look, if push comes to shove, they can put Petey Hart in there and he'll score for you. You know, they've got Bradley to come off the bench. As I say, do they put Big Kennedy, even Kirkpatrick in and play them two big massive lads on the edge of the square? Do they bring Cal McShane off the bench in terms of playing that role? Does Taylor McCann come off the bench and score? And the last thing I suppose is, you know, not only the options they have on the park and the different formation that they can have. I mean, they can bring McCurry out the centre half forward as well, who's equally able out there to bring other people into the game. The options that they have coming off the bench, Daniel and me are going to disagree with this. Daniel Hussey and me are going to disagree with this. I actually think Tyrone have a stronger bench. I don't think that maybe a stronger 23, but I think the 5 options that they get in ordinary time, it has been shown in the last 3 games especially that these guys will make a difference. The Taylor McCanns, the Cal McShane's coming off the bench. This is going to be absolutely huge in this game, but I think Tyrone have more of that. So for them 4 reasons, and just the momentum they have going into this game after everything that's happened to them this year, I just think Tyrone. I really do. And I would love, look, nobody would love on Sunday night for me than to sit with a can of beer and toast the curse of Mayo was gone. But I just don't see it. I don't see it this weekend, and that's my reasons why.
Can't wait for the reaction with the Mayo fans piping in, Kevin. And there's lots of them. There's lots of them, my friend. I'll tell you that much. Daniel Goodwin, who is going to win this game on Saturday?
I don't think I need to say anymore, to be honest with you. Kevin's after covering the whole thing from start to finish now.
He's a genius. He's an absolute genius.
Look, if I was picking with...
Listen, Daniel, I'm no Pat Spillane anyway. I'm not making anything up here.
You're Joe Brawley. You told me you're like Joe Brawley.
If you look at the 2 semi-finals, they're both enthralling in their own way. I think Mayo would have preferred if Kerry won it. And that's to be quite honest, because they'd have had the kind of underdog status. Like Mayo are favourites for this game. Which, like, when's the last time Mayo were favourites going into an All-Ireland final? It's hard to remember. So I don't know where they ever been. Maybe Donegal that time. Was that where they even favourites for that? I'm not sure.
No, Donegal were, yeah.
Yeah, it's uncharted territory for them in many respects. And I suppose hunger-wise either, and kind of, I don't know, can you say they'll be hungrier than Tyrone will either, you know, whereas you could make arguments that Kerry could be complacent, they'll go in as underdogs, or they'll go in as favourites, and it'd be a case to show up. But I think Mayo here meeting a team, obviously haven't had the same disappointments, but are kind of on a very similar trajectory of they're as hungry to win the game as well, which I think is probably will swing it in Tyrone's favour. I'd also think I'd agree with Kevin. I think Tyrone's a better footballing team. I think they probably know what they're about a small bit more than Mayo do. And they show that against Kerry. I think Mayo probably, the Mayo Dublin game was a one lifetime game where Dublin just fell apart, which I don't think we've seen, and I think they just made the wrong decisions on the ball time and time again, and in fairness to Mayo, they took advantage of it. Whereas I think Tyrone came into the Kerry game with a structured plan, and they knew how they were going to dismantle Kerry. I think they're better footballers. I think they're more dangerous up front, Tyrone are. And you know what? I think Tyrone will win the game. The only things in the back of my head is that Mayo come along with one of these game of the ages where everything goes right for them, because they've gotten into all these All-Ireland finals and it's been the opposite, and they've had all the sad stories and the bad things happen to them. And is it their time that just there's just this feeling in the back of my gut that says, you know what, they're going to put a performance together that we've never seen. And you know what, all credit to them to do. But if I'm going with my brain and if I had to put a few bob in it, I'd go with Tyrone. But I still wouldn't be surprised to see Mayo pull a rabbit out of the hat. And I know that's kind of a wishy-washy answer, but you know, it's just I'm just caveating for the crazy Mayo performance.
Yeah,
as Power the Horse said, this mission they're on.
Yeah, it's just going to be a mad game. Daniel Hussey, last word with yourself.
Yeah, funny, the favourite thing, I do remember Mayo were evens to beat Dublin in 2013, which is hard to believe because ever since every other game Dublin played Mayo after that, Mayo were literally like 3-1 on the +3 handicap. So it is fascinating that they're back as favourites here. I'm going to go for do you remember I was on for the Dublin Mayo game, John, and I predicted a Dublin in extra time, which was half right, but for
penalties.
Everyone obviously followed. Penalties I did, yeah, Dublin penalty shootout, where obviously this time it's going to go to a replay if it's a draw after extra time, which I think most people know, but just the odd person's missed it, that if we do get a draw and it goes to extra time and it gets another draw, we're back another 2 weeks, and I'm sure the COVID cases will come up again. But
Don't mention that.
I'm not mentioning it. I'm just saying, if I'm back on in 2 weeks' time, it's the first thing I'll be mentioning. Going with the All-Ireland be long done by now. But I have a feeling it could easily be a draw. And I can also see in extra time both the teams too nervous to go for that score, because given what's at stake. But if you gun to my head on what team will actually get through it in extra time, I'm going to make it a clean sweep for Tyrone. I do think that bit of, they just had that something about them, and I wouldn't necessarily agree with like the bench thing that Kevin says. I kind of half agree with him as well, that Mayo have a lot of these players, but the quality of that Tyrone bench might just pip it. But I do expect this to be so tight, and therefore I'm going for a draw for anyone who wants to get paid out by Paddy Power, but Tyrone in extra time. So if you want to do the lift the cup one or whatever, but just marginally by one.
Clean slate, lads. I'm going with Tyrone in extra time as well. I could just foresee it, but who knows, lads? This has been a mad season, lads. We cannot wait for this game this weekend, the All-Ireland final. The very, very best luck to Tyrone and Mayo, lads. Thanks a million for joining me this week, and of course, this podcast is sponsored by OrgaRetro.com and Attack Sport. Use my promo code TheJMacPodcast to get 15% off on OrgaRetro.com and get the best skins, gloves, and equipment on Atak.ie. Be Attack minded. Kevin, Daniel, thanks very much.
Fun, lads.
Thanks.
Cheers, guys.